Hi and welcome back for today's project. You know, I love starting out by using some watercolors to make my background. Now today's card is slightly bigger than usual, as I'll be gluing it down on a black base of 21 cm by 21 cm or 8 inch by 8 inch. So my background is drying and I'm going to use this stencil, which is the fiber stencil from Visible Image. I've cut out 4 pieces of transparent paper on which I very softly drew rectangles using a pencil. My rectangles are 7.5 by 8.5 cm. And I'm going to turn them 90 degrees around. So the first one is 8.5 to the right, then it's 8.5 going down, the third one is 8.5 going to the side, and the last one is having 8.5 going up. This leaves me with a tiny square in the middle. Now I've laid down my stencil on top of my paper and I want a very soft finish, so I'm taking a lot of the ink off by rubbing my blending tool over some paper. You can always add more color afterwards if you want to, but it's harder to take it away. The next step is giving my squares torn edges, and that's why I had my lines on my paper. Using a ruler makes it very easy to have straight edges. And that's when I noticed that using the VersaFine ink was a bad choice. My transparent paper is having a slick surface, so my ink isn't drying very well. When I was using an eraser, I took off some of my ink, so I made a test piece to try some things out. So here's my test piece. I've put down some ink in the same way using my stencil, and you can see it's a slick surface. It's a tiny bit shiny. Now I'm going to show you what an eraser is doing. It just takes off the ink completely. Now when I go ahead and I rub my finger over it, it doesn't really smear, but you can see on my white paper underneath that the ink is coming off a tiny bit. So I took out my distress glaze and I want to try out if this would protect my ink. So all you do is you take a little bit on your finger and then you rub it over your paper, and as you can see, it doesn't smear my ink around. You just put it on and then later on you buff it up using a paper towel. Now when I rub it with my finger, there is something coming off, but I don't know exactly if it's ink or my distress glaze. But when I go in with my eraser, it does move around a tiny bit, but you don't take it off completely. And I'll try to show you as good as possible. So I'm taking my white paper underneath. You can see that it has smeared a bit, but it's way better than it was before. Now you might think that heat setting is the perfect solution, but some of these papers don't take heat very well. And you will see when I'm finished heat setting my ink that my paper has buckled. And even after heat setting it, my eraser is just taking off all the ink. But first I want to go and stamp my word, and I chose this "Where Dreams Take You" from Visible Image. And I'm going for the word perception. And of course I was smart this time and I took out my StazOn ink for this. And then this happened. My stamp took away the grey ink, leaving a ghost print right above my word perception. So I went back in with my stencil and some ink to fix it. And then I went ahead with the distress glaze to protect my grey ink. Just to be sure I had no smearing, I first dabbed it on before starting to rub. And I just went ahead and covered the whole piece. I'm ready to finish everything off. All I need now is a tiny element, and I'm going for this tiny heart in the crown from this stencil Dark Hearts from Visible Image. And I will go and give it a coat of some glossy accents afterwards.